Yo, 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 yo. Hey guys. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for tuning in. And we're going to talk more about one-step equations. So if you have not watched part one of one-step equations, you have to watch that before this because I went into a lot of detail as to why we do what we do when solving equations and how to show the work and how to show the steps. And I'm not going to go over as much detail in this video, so please make sure you watch part one first. All right, key terms. Inverse operations. We talked about it in the last video, and I'm just going to go over it again one more time because that's how important it is. Inverse operations, they undo each other. Okay, they're the opposite operations that cancel out one another. So addition and subtraction are opposites, and multiplication and division are opposites, or they're also known as inverse operations. Now, we're going to solve one-step equations, but now we're going to solve one-step equations that have decimals and that have fractions. So, for solving equations that have decimals and fractions, the process is absolutely no different than it was with whole numbers. So we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to use our inverse operations. We're going to cancel things out and to get the variable by itself. We're still going to follow the rule of whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other side of the equal sign. So looking at this first one over here, I've got my equal sign. My goal is to get x by itself. That's always the goal. So to get x by itself, I have to get rid of this minus 9.1. So to get rid of minus 9.1, because this is subtraction, I'm going to do the opposite, or the inverse operation, which is addition. So I'm going to add 9.1. And whatever I do to the left side, I have to do the right side. So I'm going to add 9.1 over here. Now, these cancel. The inverse operation of itself always cancels it out. That's why we do it. And then we have to bring down our variable. Notice how the work should look identical to what we did in the part one video because our work always looks the same with the equations to help us stay organized and accurate. Here's where a lot of people are going to be making mistakes though. So right here I have negative 12.8 plus 9.1. So I am adding negatives and a positive. This is where you're in reality actually doing subtraction because we're combining negatives with positives here. And then we keep the sign of the larger number. I'm starting at negative 12.8 and then I'm adding 9.1, so I know I'm going to stay negative because I'm not going to quite get all the way back to 0. When I subtract these numbers, a minus 1 is 7, bring down my decimal, and then 12 minus 9 is 3. So I got negative 3.7. So x is equal to negative 3.7. If I wanted to check my answer, I could take x equals negative 3.7 and I could plug it into x in my original equation. So I could have negative 3.7 minus 9.1, and then I see that I have negative 3.7, negative 9.1, so I'm adding those together, and that does give me negative 12.8, which is what I got here, so I got it right. So my answer is negative 3.7. Okay. This one over here on the right hand side. For this one, some of us are going to say, well, the m is second, so do we subtract m or how does this work? So remember, our goal is always to get our variable by itself. So if my goal is to get the variable by itself, then what I need to do is I need to get rid of this 3.2. Now, the 3.2 is a constant. It's out here. It's not being multiplied or divided by anything. So this is a positive 3.2. So what's the opposite of plus 3.2 or positive 3.2 is negative 3.2 or minus 3.2. Because 3.2 minus 3.2 is 0. That's our goal, is to get 0 to make it cancel and go away. Whatever we do on the left side of the equal sign, we have to do on the right. So I need to also subtract 3.2 from the right side as well. My variable comes down because I haven't done anything with that yet. So I get m equals, and now I got to do negative 8.5 minus 3.2. So this is kind of confusing because over here we said we had to add 9.1, but we really did subtraction. Over here we're saying we're going to subtract, but we're actually going to do addition. If I pull this off to the side here, negative 8.5 minus 3.2. I have 8.5 negatives. I have 3.2 negatives. I have a lot of negatives that I'm combining here. So I'm really going to add these to get 11.7 and keep the sign of my number as negative 11.7. Also, another way to look at it is keep, change, change. So when we had done adding, when we worked on adding and subtracting integers back in August and September, negative 8.5 minus 3.2, we said, all right, well, we can add the opposite by keep, change, change. So it's really negative 8.5 plus negative 3.2. So we're adding a negative with a negative, which means we add them together, keep that negative sign. And so we get negative 11.7. And there's my final answer. I'm all done. Okay. Fractions don't change anything. And I know we don't love fractions, okay, but it's not going to change our process at all. So for this one, I have negative 2/3 plus y. So again, I want to get my y by itself. So I got to get rid of the minus the negative 2/3 here. So the opposite of negative 2/3 is plus 2/3. Because again, my goal is just to get to 0. Because negative 2/3 plus 2/3 is 0. They cancel each other out. They are complete opposites. And whatever I do on one side of my equal sign, I have to do on the other side of my equal sign. And then now I can bring down my y. These go away. The nice part for this one is 8 plus 2/3. It's just 8 and 2/3. So I'm all done. There's nothing else I have to do. Now, had 8 been a fraction, I would have to find a common denominator. I would have to add the fractions together and then simplify if I needed to. But I didn't have to do all that this time around. So I'm all done. 8 and 2/3 is my final answer. Go ahead and try this one on your own. As n plus 3/4 equals negative 7. Try it on your own. See what you get for n. Okay. So I'm trying to get n by itself. So to get n by itself, I have to get rid of plus 3/4. So the opposite of plus 3/4 is minus 3/4. And whatever I do on one side of the equal sign, I have to do on the other. So I'm going to subtract 3/4 from both sides. Those cancel. I have to bring my n down in my equal sign. Now I have to do negative 7 minus 3/4. So again, if we always have to work off to the side, if it makes it easier, we can always do that. So if I use keep, change, change, and I add the opposite, so that's really negative 7 plus negative 3/4. I'm adding these numbers together and keeping the sign, because I'm just taking a negative and I'm adding it with another negative. So negative 7 plus negative 3/4, well, I'm adding these numbers together, so 7, and then my answer stays negative. So that's going to be negative. 7 plus 3/4, 7 and 3/4. So again, didn't have to actually do too much addition work there for those fractions. That worked out pretty nicely. Okay, finally, I'm actually going to clear all this right now just to give us some space. I want to move this up. I'll move all these out of the way. So finally, for my last one right here, make this one a little bit bigger, because sometimes we struggle with seeing these ones. This is a fraction. Fractions are division. So because this is division, I need to do the opposite with the multiplication. This is y divided by 0.4. So to cancel out divided by 0.4, I'm going to multiply both sides by 0.4. And whatever I do on one side, I have to do on the other side, because these cancel each other out. I bring down my variable and I bring down my equal sign. Negative 2/3 times 0.4. This is where, again, I would go off to the side and start doing my work. I know a negative times a positive is negative, so I know that part, so I got that part figured out. And now I can actually do my multiplication. 4 times 3 is 12. There we go. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9, so I get 92, but then I got to account for the decimals. 1, 2 numbers after the decimal, so I got to move it over 1, 2. So y equals 0.92. And I'm all done. Now, if I were to actually plug that in for y, it's negative 0.92 divided by 0.4. If I were to check that division, that's how I know if I get the answer right. So it's nice to know how to also divide by decimals, because we're going to have to do that sometimes. And it's nice to be able to check our work to see if we get it correct. 4 goes into 9 twice. So I can subtract 8, I'm left with 1. Bring down my 2, and I already brought up my decimal. 4 goes into 12 3 times. I get 2.3. And then a negative divided by a positive is negative. So I did it correctly. The left side is equal to the right side. Okay. I got two more. It's good to see the guys. These take a lot of practice, so we're going to do a lot of practice on these. We're going to continue to see a lot of different problems, and because they all sometimes they look a little bit differently, so it's good to see some different scenarios. So like for this one right here, I have the variable on the right side of the equal sign. So I have 30. This one's kind of hard to see, so I'm just going to fold it up here a little bit. There we go. So I have negative 0.5 times a on the right side and 30 is on the left side. My goal is still to get the variable by itself. So I'm not going to start subtracting 30 over here. I know we normally work on the left hand side. I got to get this a by itself, so I got to get rid of this multiplied by negative 0.5. So because this is times 0.5, this is multiplication. The way I undo multiplications, I do the inverse operation and I divide by negative 0.5. And that makes it go away. But whatever I do on one side of the equal sign, gotta do on the other side. So I have to divide by negative 0.5. So again, now this is where I can do my work off to the side. I have 30 divided by 0.5. Can't have a decimal on the outside, so I'm going to move it over, add a 0. So now I realize that 5 goes into 30 6 times. I have nothing remaining. I have a 0, so we just bring that up. So the answer is 60. And then I got to look. Positive divided by negative is negative 60. So our process is the same with decimals. But yes, you might have to show some work off to the side. Finally, negative 3/4 times x equals negative 5. Now for this one, what we would want to do is, this is multiplication. This is 3/4 times x. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So what I could do is I can divide by negative 3/4. I'm dividing by whatever number is being multiplied by. And I'm going to divide by negative 3/4. Now I wrote it this way because I know we like to see dividing fractions side by side. It kind of can get a little bit confusing when it looks like this right here. So these cancel because I know anything divided by itself is 1. That's why we do it. Division always cancels out multiplication. So now I actually have to do negative 5 divided by 3/4. Well, this is where we got to follow our rules of skip, flip, multiply. For dividing fractions, you're really multiplying by the reciprocal. So this is really negative 5 times negative 4/3. We change it to multiplication, we flip the second fraction. So now I can do that multiplication where this is like 5 over 1, and I just multiply straight across. So 5 times negative 4, negative 5 times negative is going to be positive. So I got positive 20 over 3. And I can stop there. I'm all done. There's nothing else I have to do here. Okay. Now, a shortcut. Instead of writing it as dividing by negative 3/4, whenever we divide by fractions, we're really multiplying it by the reciprocal, so we're always flipping it and multiplying it. So that's what you could do here, just to kind of save yourself some work. So you could show your steps as going straight to that multiplication. Because dividing by negative 3/4 is the same thing as multiplying by 4 over 3. So what I could do is I could just multiply by negative 4/3 right away, because these actually cross-simplify and cancel each other out. So it still gets me 1. And then that means I'm multiplying this side by negative 4/3. I multiplied by the reciprocal, and then we're right back to where we just were. It doesn't change the process. I'm still doing 5 times 4, which is 20. 1 times 3 is 3. So it just skips the whole dividing step, and it goes straight into you've already done the skip, flip, multiply step by multiplying by the reciprocal. And this only works when we have something that looks like this, when the coefficient is a fraction. Okay. Final problem is you will have word problems. Okay, it's not very much different than some of the word problems that we've already seen, but these are we're going to write an equation from the word problem. Sometimes all I'm going to be concerned about is the equation, and you won't even actually have to solve. So let's write the equation from this word problem first, and then we'll solve. So the scuba diver starts at negative 12.2 meters, and they're going to rise to the surface. We don't know how much they're going to rise by. That's our unknown. So let's find the vertical distance that the diver will travel. So they're going to rise up to the surface, and they're going to stop. Okay. So when they rise up, they're rising X amount of feet. I don't know how far they're going to go up. I know that when they rise, they're going to stop here at negative 4.55. So they're going to start here, they're going to rise a certain amount, and they're going to end up at negative 4.55. There's my equation. And then I can solve this equation from here. What I would like you to do is I would like you to pause and just solve this equation on your own just to get some extra practice in. So go ahead and solve it on your own. So I want to get x by itself, so I got to cancel out this negative 12.2. The opposite of negative 12.2 is positive 12.2. Negative 12.2 and positive 12.2 cancel out. I have to bring down my x. Now whatever I do on one side of the equal sign, I have to do on the other side, so I still have to add 12.2 on this side as well. I have a negative and I'm doing addition here. So when I have start at negative and I'm adding, I'm really doing subtraction. And I keep the sign of the bigger number. So I'm going to work off to the side, and I'm going to do 12.2 minus 4.55. And I know my answer is positive because I have more positives than I do negative. So then it's just a matter of doing your actual subtraction. So I'm going to have to do some borrowing here. Let's see, I'll get, oh, it should have been 11. Woo, almost made a big mistake. 11 minus 5 is 6. Bring down my decimal, 11 minus 4 is 7. So I should have gotten 7.65. So the amount of distance a scuba diver travels is 7.65 meters. Okay. Guys, independent practice problems, you have 3 of them. Please take your time and work them out. Things to remember. I want you to write down one note. Okay, and I'm actually going to be looking at your things to remember notes. So write down one thing here that you think is important to remember for solving equations, whether that be something about whatever you do on one side of the equal sign, you have to do on the other side. Inverse operations, skip, flip, multiply when dividing by fractions, anything like that. Okay, but I want you to write one important note about in your things to remember, and you get to choose, and then I'm going to look at those. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope this helped. Take your time on this, and if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. All right, Cordias, out.